All right, folks. Well, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune. So it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home game, and at Rec Poker Jim on the hellscape we call Twitter. And I have the best freaking job in the world hanging out with my friends and talking poker here on the Strategy Forums edition of the Rec Poker Podcast every Monday night while we steal each other's chips in the free nightly home game. Now, I have to mention to you that we're brought to you by Running Aces, the official sponsor of the Rec Poker Podcast. They're located less than an hour north of the Twin Cities in the beautiful state of Minnesota. You can find out more about them at runaces.com. Most of what we do here is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization, so we really depend on support of our sponsors and our premium members who take part in our training material and study opportunities for only $22 a month. Now, you can always sign up for free. We've got a fantastic bunch of resources in our free community membership. All you need to do to sign up is to provide an email address and a smile, although we do insist on both. But if you want to take your game to the next level, you can get your first month of Rec Poker Premium for only $22. Well, it's $22 every month. You can get your first month for only $5 by using the code RecPoker at checkout, and you can get it for even less by supporting a local food bank. We love to support local food banks here at Rec Poker. So if you send us a screenshot of your donation to a local food bank for any amount, we will credit you for a free month of Rec Poker as a way of saying thanks for supporting some neighbors and community members in need. So please do check that out and come check us out as well. Now, they let me host the show on Mondays, but I'm just one man. It takes a group, a gang, a crew to make all the magic happen around here. We call this group of wizards the Wrecking Crew. And if you want to find out more about me or the rest of the crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew, or you can just listen up to meet one of them tonight, one of the OGs of Rec Poker and the Wrecking Crew, one of my friends from way back. It's the one and only Rob Washam. Welcome, Rob.
Welcome. Yes, you can find me as Radman50 just about everywhere. And on the first and third Wednesdays of every month, you can find me with a group of our premium members discussing the greatest poker books around. So join us for that.
That's right. Now, this is the forums edition of the podcast, and we've got some exciting news when it comes to the forums over at Rec Poker, as a matter of fact. So you can always go to rec.poker/forums, and you'll find some great conversation starters, places to post your own questions or comments. It's so important as a learning player to share your areas of uncertainty with peers and friends and mentors like you'll find here to get some great responses and help you improve as a player. We've actually started moving a lot of our live chat conversations over to Discord. I'm sure you've heard about Discord as a fantastic online platform for real-time chatting. They've really upped their game a little bit over the last little while. And we've found that we can have our threaded forum conversations on Discord just as easily as we could on the website. So we're going to keep the website forums going because I know some people like posting there, and it is excellent for kind of like long form response-based strategy conversations. But I'd encourage our listeners to come check out the Discord channel. We've got a little over 400 or 500 members there right now. It's a very vibrant and encouraging place to come and discuss poker. It's not just poker strategy. There's a lot of off the felt stuff to get involved with. You'll find some friends here at Rec Poker one way or another, and we're really ramping up our Discord offering. So I'd encourage folks to go check that out. And if you go to rec.poker/Discord, you can get an invitation and join the fun there and see all the great stuff that we've got going on. So we're actually this is our first episode of the forums where we're taking a hand from the Discord hand review section. This is a tournament hand that our own Chris Jones played in the Venom. And he said Chris is such a studious player. He said he ran his hand history for the Venom tournament through GTO Wizard, and that this spot came up as being the most negative EV play that he made in the course of his tournament. So like every good student, He's taking the hands that he performed the worst in and bringing them here for us to discuss on the air. So thank you, Chris Jones, who couldn't join us tonight, but looking forward to getting into this hand of his. And we've already gotten a ton of great responses to the post here. So I hope folks go to our Discord for free and join for free and check out some of the great conversations. So, Rob, you were talking earlier when we were setting up this hand. This is an interesting spot. The Venom is a prestigious online tournament. If folks don't know, the buy-in is like $2,600. That's US dollars, mind you, not the Canadian equivalent. Um, and so a lot of players satellite into it. It's kind of like in a way it's like the WSOP main event, which is that it's out of the bankroll for a lot of recreational players, but a lot of promotional work goes into it. So a lot of players satellite into it. So you have a lot of players in the field that wouldn't normally be playing in a $2,600 online tournament. And then you also have, of course, all the best players in the world. So it's a very interesting field to navigate, and you encounter players of all skill levels and experience levels. This hand is about a spot where Chris was in the big blind. I'll set it up for you, Rob, and then we can kind of have a little conversation about it. So Chris says a wide and loose player opens on the button. They're quite deep. They've got about 146 big blinds, and Chris is the effective stack in the big blind with 43 big blinds. And 43 is still a comfortable stack size. I think once you get down below 35, you have to really start being thoughtful about which hands you're going to three bet and the sizes that you're going to three bet to. But above 35 and in the 40s, I think you can still play your standard three bet game. You don't have to worry about committing with one raise, that kind of stuff. So we're in a fairly typical spot. The player on the button is showing up in Chris's HUD as a 3730 player with VPIP PFR. So 3730, very wide, very aggressive. They're opening a lot of hands. They're playing a lot of hands aggressively. So when this player opens the button, I think we should be three betting pretty widely from the big blind. They've got a bunch of junk in their hand, and we can profitably win with a bluff here fairly frequently. And that is Chris's thought as well. He opts to three bet to with King 4 offsuit. And the original raise was to 2.1, and Chris raises to 9 big blinds with King 4 offsuit. And Chris says in his post, this is a marginal spot, but given their opening, I feel fine about it. And I think what he's really getting at is just when players open with such wide ranges, they're good candidates for three bets because they have a lot of hands that have to fold. And once you run out of good, strong hands to three bet with, you have to start three betting with less strong hands. And so the kind of hands you're going to look for are hands that have aces or kings in them as blockers, right? Ideally, some other kind of like suitedness or connectedness that they can benefit from play post flop. And Chris has selected one of these hands, King 4 offsuit. It's got a king blocker. It can make a good one pair hand, and it's also an easy hand to fold if our opponent decides to four bet here. And it's also a kind of hand where we don't really care about missing the opportunity to see a flop. It's not like a hand like 9-8 suited, which we'd actually really like to see a flop with. So we would resent having to fold to a four bet. This is the kind of hand that it's a one and done essentially, and we can try and get the fold here. And if we don't, then we just play poker post flop out of position. Rob, what do you think about the sizing? It feels so we should definitely be sizing up a little when we're out of position. It feels like it's still maybe a little big. I don't know. Is 9 your number out of position? Against a 3x, I could see the 9 here, or like a 2.1. This is so nitpicky, Rob, but I kind of feel like I might go down to 8 big blinds here, or 8.5. Nine
Yeah.
just feels like a little bigger than we need against this opponent because we're really trying to just leverage our fold equity here. We've got a blocker. They're opening a bunch of crap. We shouldn't need to make it too big for them to fold the crap that we want them to fold.
Yeah, and I agree. I think you see in tournaments these days that people are opening 2.5, 2.1, 2.2, and why are they doing that? Because those bet sizes work just as well as larger bet sizes from the standpoint of isolation or whatever you're trying to accomplish with your pre-flop raise. So when you typically what I would do from out of position, either the small blind or the big blind, I would go three times my opponent's original raise and then add one big blind because I'm out of position.
Hmm.
So that would be what, 6.3, 7.3. So 7.5 big blinds, saving yourself 1.5 big blinds. Especially as you get lower in stack sizes, that can be very important. But I think he was trying to make a statement to this guy with his bet size. So I'm not going to, I don't have any qualms about him going to 9. I think that's totally fine. I think 7.5 is totally fine. So anywhere between 7.5 and 9 is probably a good bet size there for a 3 bet.
Yeah. And I think depending on how savvy your opponents are, you don't really want to be allowing your actual holdings to dictate the size. But I actually like sizing up a little bit with this exact hand because you really just want folds. Like you want them to turn down a lot of those marginal hands and just fold them because you don't really want to play out of position with King 4 offsuit. Um, it's fine to like go into it with range advantage because you're the three better. But if they're on the fence about folding or calling, I don't mind adding just like a little extra weight behind the fold category there. It just makes for easier decisions post flop. So I get what Chris is thinking there as well.
Yeah,
So
the funny thing is, we look at this button who has 146 big blinds. And so far, he's opened 100% of the cutoffs when it's folded to him and 100% of the buttons when it's
hmm
folded to him.
hmm
So basically, what he is doing um, is opening anything. So that tells me that he doesn't necessarily have to have a very strong hand or a very strong range to be making these opens.
hmm
So what that also tells me is I don't need to bet as big to get him to fold. If this was a tight player who was only opening, the normal amount of hands and maybe even
Right.
tighter from a big blind or a cutoff range, then yeah, maybe going a little bit bigger to to give that, feeling to him that hey, we have a really, really strong hand. Um, I don't think we need to do that here just because of the type of player that he is. Looks like he's just trying to steal blinds. He's just
hmm
trying to steal blinds. And he doesn't necessarily have to have a monster to do that with. He can do it with just about any two the way he's playing here. So that's why I think we can probably go 7.5 or 8 and be just fine with it. But really, that's not the discussion that Chris wants us to get involved in. He
That's right.
doesn't
Take it
really
away,
care.
Rob. Take it away. Get us there.
The the biggest question that we have is what do we do on the flop? Okay, so we have King 4 offsuit. Um, we open to 9, or I mean they open at 2.2. We 3 bet to 9 in the big blind. And then the flop comes Jack 10-9 rainbow. Now, Jack 10-9 is one of those medium type of flops where it can hit everybody.
hmm
I mean, even though he's opening loose, he could be opening any hand with a queen, any hand with an 8. He could be all over the round around this flop. Um, but the fact that he has been opening so much means that he can also have missed this flop
Mm-hmm.
whole ton of time. And if you look at ranges, now the fact that he called the three bet means he's probably a little stronger than seven deuce, right? He's
Right,
not
right.
he's not probably calling with seven deuce. So he's got something. Um, so we can't discount the fact that he has just any two cards now because he did call the three bet. But I think in this spot, it's a good spot to lead out as the pre-flop three better. I think it's a good spot to lead out. You can get him to fold a lot of his backdoor type draws and his unpaired hands that
Mm-hmm.
still have equity because we really don't have much other than king high, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really all we have, king high and a gut shot. So we could probably gain by, um, you know, not allowing him to realize the equity that he has in his hand by betting out on the flop and getting him to fold some of that marginal backdoor stuff. But we don't do that. We check. And then he checks back.
Which is a good sign, I think. Um,
Right. Now, the thing is, what is he checking back?
right.
Is he checking back king queen here?
Because
Obviously,
it's
he
the,
could because it's the nuts
yes, and it
and he's
doesn't
not
he
going to.
doesn't have to worry about protection as much. It's a rainbow board.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
But now our decision was based on denying equity. So his decision should be very similar. If he
Mm-hmm.
has, if he doesn't need protection, then he could be checking. If he needs protection, then he should be betting.
Yep.
He should be betting hands that are like queen seven, queen six, any queen that he got there with should be probably be betting for protection. Um, the fact that we checked means that either we have the nuts or we don't feel that we need or we don't feel that we need protection. And we're trying to get him to bluff at us. But so if that's the case, wouldn't he want to find out where he's at, which
Mm-hmm.
is a horrible reason to bet, but trying to deny equity is more like it. So I think a queen here would probably bet if we check to him, but instead he checked. Then we get to the turn, which is the four. So now we have a pair of fours with a king kicker on a jack 10, 9, 4 board.
Mm.
Not a lot. Again, we're going to check. And this time he bets 5.91 big blinds, which is kind of a weird sizing. Let's just say six. And what do we
Yeah,
have
it's
in
a
the middle? We have it's like a third of a pot, a
yeah,
little less than
about
a
that.
third,
A
actually.
little less than a third, 30%
A
or
little
so,
less than
yeah.
a third of a pot. So it's a very small bet. And we call. Do we ever check raise it?
I mean, it's tricky. We're basically bluffing if we do. Um, we were basically trying to get them to fold like pocket eights, pocket sevens, pocket sixes, a hand like ace nine or something that paired but doesn't have a very strong hand. And it's a weird line for us to take to go check flop, check turn, and then check raise turn. What is the story that we're trying to tell there? I think when we check flop and turn like this, we are kind of restricting the lines, the hands that we can represent now, right?
Yes. Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I agree.
so which means that usually means that we have to eliminate some of like the strong hands that we could theoretically have from zero. Now we have to kind of like remove some of them from our range. And so I kind of I kind of hesitate to like start semi bluffing on the turn. Usually I like to just like start that on the flop and then decide to continue or not on the turn. The
Yep.
delayed aggression is less common, and that can play to your strength or against you, depending on what your opponent's expecting. But I don't know. Do you feel like we have any showdown value with a pair of fours here?
Well,
That's the
yeah,
real
obviously
question.
we do have showdown value. If he has a naked queen,
Yeah.
he's
Ace
what he
King
has right
or
now is yeah, ace queen, ace king. Those hands are, we're ahead of those hands.
hmm.
So yeah, we do have some showdown value. So that makes a call. But here's the thing. If you think about our hand, you think about what's on the board. What is the best card we want to see on the river?
Hmm. Well,
It's a four. The only thing it
it's a
is a four
four. Right. Yeah, yeah. A king
or a
brings in the
queen
four straight. Yeah, yeah, a
or a
queen, I
queen,
guess. A queen. A
a
queen.
queen or a four. But
Yeah.
the king gives us two pair, which we would have been over the moon if that would have happened on the flop.
Right.
But now that it happens on the river, we get the king on the river after we call.
Yeah.
And so now that brings that naked queen is now has it straight.
Because
We
so
have
for
two
the
pair.
and for the audience, so the board is now king, jack, 10, 9, 4. So any queen makes a straight. Um,
Right.
and it
He's not
does.
indicating there's any flush type things. So
And what's our opponent? Let's think about our opponent's betting range on the turn here a little bit as well. A lot of the hands that they would be bluffing with have now improved because those would be semi bluffs with a queen.
mhm.
Um, and we're even behind some of those semi bluffs by like the pocket sixes, pocket sevens, pocket eights. Now, I guess we're not now because we
Yeah, now
rivered
we have two
the
pair.
second
Yeah,
pair. Yeah.
right.
Um, so we're we're still losing to a lot of their value, I guess is what I'm saying. So we check river and they bet.
Shove.
Oh, they shove, right. And
They
it's an
shove.
over bet, right? I think at this point that's
Oh
it's a
yeah,
bigger
well,
bet than
a huge overbet.
so it's a difficult position for us because we're beating their bluffs. Are we beating are we beating any value hands here? He'd have to be shoving a hand like 9, 10, or 10 jack that we
Right,
beat now.
right. Yep,
Because we've got a very unlikely two pair.
correct.
Um, I don't think he takes this line. I don't think the opponent takes the shove line here with a lot of those middle of the range hands. So they're doing it with their bluffs and their straights. Are they doing it with sets and two pair, or are they doing a different sizing with that? Or do they even
I
get
would,
here?
it if you think about obviously this we've put this guy as a thinking player
Hmm.
because the lines that he's taking is taking advantage of other players and putting a lot of pressure on them by opening 100% of the cutoffs and the buttons when it's folded to him.
Hmm.
Because of his chip stack, he's probably the biggest chip stack at the table. If I recall, I was watching Chris while he was streaming this, and if I recall, Chris was like right with a bunch of other players as far as chip stack size. And there was a couple players with, a lot more and maybe a couple with less. But 146 big blinds, I think, is a very big chip stack at this level of the tournament. So yeah, he's smart enough to know that. So he's also smart enough to know that this king put all the queens that
Hmm.
Chris could have. Now, what's Chris three betting with? That
Hmm.
check, that check twice. I mean, ace queen is right there. That's
Hmm.
right in that range that's going to check there, right? Although you could do, a semi bluff with the open and a straight draw, but there's a lot of queens in his range also. So is he willing to? I mean, is he willing to face a made straight, or does he have ace queen himself for the absolute nuts?
Hmm.
I don't see him jamming without ace queen, or at least a queen, but more than likely ace queen,
Yeah,
because otherwise he's opening himself up to what do we always talk about um, when you go all in? Well, you're letting your opponent play perfectly.
that's
If he
it.
has
That's
ace
the
queen, he
phrase.
calls, and if he doesn't, he folds.
Yeah. Then
So
that's why
what hands are you doing it with? You have to be doing it with ace queen.
and so that's why and I think he could do it with some queens.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, but I think he does not take this line with like the majority of their value holdings. So the sets, the two pairs, the one pair,
yep.
those aren't taking this line, I don't think.
No, no,
It's
they want to see showdown. That's all.
now so the real question is how many combos of bluffs are they doing this with? And I will say Chris has really opened the door for some bluffing here by his passive play post flop by checking on the flop and checking the turn and checking the river. Um, of course, the dynamic changes once you make that first check on the flop, but you have kind of waved the red flag to the bull to say come and bluff more than you would typically because um, typically we're going to be continuing with our stronger hands post flop. And as the
Yeah,
three better, yeah,
I would think as a three better, if you're three betting with ace queen and you see this flop, you're betting out.
I think so too.
You're
I
betting
think so
out. So
too.
he's probably pretty much, you know, um, projected to his opponent that he does not have ace
Hmm.
queen or even a queen, period. Because I think a queen after three betting, any queen after three betting on this flop is probably going to be leading out.
Hmm. Hmm. So then that does change things a little bit if we feel like our opponent can discount all Chris's queens, maybe other than exactly queen king, right? Then he can start value shoving, sets of, although how many sets does he even have that he's not four betting? I guess I mean, he can't, I don't think he has kings, jacks or tens or nines. I think he's betting flop. Um, a lot of those two pair combos too. I think he's betting flop when checked
Right,
to
right,
in a three
right.
bet pot. So, but again, I guess we don't really have to. Okay, I guess we're getting a little astray here because given the shove on the river, we don't have to wonder about what he's doing with two pairs because I don't think they're showing. I don't think they're showing up there enough.
Right.
So this brings us back to how many bluffing combos does he have? So Chris does in his post. He says. Um, I won't spoil the whole thing here, but he says GTO Wizard thinks this is a call to facing the shove to call. And to get there, he's breaking down the combos of bluffs. We have to think that they called our three bet and are now bluffing with pocket fives, sixes, sevens, or eights, ace three suited to ace seven suited, and ace 10 off, ace nine off, and ace eight off. And the question is, do we think that they're really bluffing with all those combos? I
No,
don't.
I
I
don't either.
don't.
I don't either. I think the biggest mistake in the hand is not betting out on the flop because you
And you
can
could,
make a bet right there of 6 to 7 big blinds and have established a range stronger than the one you actually have.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, because you really should have a stronger range than him. because you 3-bet and he called. So yeah, I think by not establishing ourself with a strong range on the flop, we allowed him to make this play. And because of our actions, like you said earlier, we've pretty much taken all our queens out of our range.
Mm-hmm.
So, he
So
could have
let's,
ace king. He could be doing this with ace king.
yeah, 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 yeah. Again, and yeah, again, we can say like, is it a four bet from this player, from this aggressive player, pre-flop with that, but um.
It
And I will
probably
say,
is.
as the three better, we can downsize our flop C bets as well. So we don't need to even bet a lot to
Right.
maintain that range advantage by betting here. Although the 9-10 Jack flop, it is good for both players, but I do feel like that just smashes the calling range. Um, they just like so much more of their range is contained there. Like if we have a polarized three bet, then a lot of our stuff misses it. And we can have some very strong one pair hands there, and we can have the sets and that kind of stuff. But I do think the calling, I think that might be in Chris's mind what caused him to check the flop, because I think typically as the three better, you're going to be C betting at a high frequency with a small sizing on a lot of boards. And I think if I had to guess, I'd say Chris looked at this board and said, this favors my opponent's range too much to bloat this pot out of position. I'm just going to take a different line. And I think it kind of works for him too, because he gets check check. He gets to call a small bet on the turn. And I think if the villain makes a more conventional bet size here, then Chris maybe calls with two pair because we're including a lot of our opponent's worst two pairs in his range now. And it's a less polarized range, I think, that takes that line.
Yeah, you got to know that after calling a 3-bet pre-flop, what does his range look like? First of all, Chris is not
Chris is not,
the
sorry, you cut out there for a second. What were you saying?
capped. Chris
He's
is
not
not
capped.
capped.
Yeah, that's
His
right. That's
range is
right.
not capped. Whereas the faller's range is now capped. He shouldn't have aces, kings, ace queen, queens. He shouldn't have any of those types of hands, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Typically, we don't know. I mean, he could be playing tricky and trappy. You never know. But in general, in general, GTO terms, he shouldn't have any of those types of hands.
Yeah.
So his range is going to be very condensed, and it's going to be very condensed in that Jack 10-9
Right.
kind of realm, right? So yeah, it's a very tricky spot. It's a really, really horrible, horrible flop for Chris. And we could sit
um,
here going around and around all night. And um, I think I think his fold was good
yeah.
on the river. I think you have to fold because it's your tournament life.
Right. Right. Right.
He's putting a lot of pressure on you. Um, I think he might not have gotten into this position if he had bet out on the flop.
Yeah. Which you can do for a small price in this
Correct.
dynamic.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm probably folding, honestly. As played, I think I'm probably folding. But it's definitely one that's going to keep me up at night, and I'm going to write up for the Rec Poker forums and get some feedback on it because it doesn't seem like a slam dunk to me either way. We've got some fantastic comments in here from SIU Ranger, Fortune, LFC, YNA, YNWA 1982. Let me see. I think we got Craig Savage in here, DFS Brat. Got a bunch of people adding some really, really good thoughts. I love how our membership takes all these different perspectives to these hands. And some people
Mm-hmm.
break it down by thinking about combos. Some people break it down by thinking about player types. Some people break it down by thinking about like uh, field tendencies and post flop betting lines. So you really get a lot out of these different approaches to how to play this hand. So I think we had a pretty good conversation about sort of some of the relevant factors, but I'd encourage our listeners go check out our free Discord channel and poke around in the hand reviews sections. You'll see some for tournaments and some for cash games. There's a lot of really good insights here from these members. So I'm excited to see this picking up, and hopefully we'll get even more folks in there posting and sharing their thoughts of this great game of poker. Rob, was there anything you wanted to add to sort of sum this up or weigh in? Are there any variables that we would change to make our decision easier or harder or
Well,
anything like
I
that?
know in some of the comments were saying that maybe we were a little optimistic three betting with a hand like King Four offsuit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Basically, I know what Chris was doing was attacking a certain player type. With a hand, like you said earlier, that has some blocker ability because it has a king in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're blocking ace, king, king, those types of hands. And we know that this player is probably wider than those types of hands anyway. He's probably playing well, we set, what was it, 37 or
30. Yeah,
37-30.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah.
he's raising, and especially in those late positions, that means those late positions is where that 30% is coming from. It's coming from the cutoff and the button. He's not probably raising 30% of the time under the gun.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably raising 30% of the time from the cutoff and the button. So we know he's pretty wide there. And King Four is actually probably ahead of a 30% range most of the time.
Yep. Yep.
So I see what Chris was doing there, but the way it played out, and we got some other comments about how maybe we shouldn't have done this against a player with a chip stack that deep.
Yep. Because he's so
We could,
deep, we can't threaten them. We can't
correct,
apply the same kind of fold equity that we can against a
exactly.
conventional stack. Yeah.
We can't put any pressure on him, whereas he can put all the pressure on us, which we
Yeah.
saw.
Yeah.
So it may have come down just to the size of the chip stack. If we were much deeper, that we could actually threaten him, maybe it's a better play.
And I will say the last thought I have on this is when we three bet against aggressive opponents pre-flop, we're doing it with a bunch of different kinds of hands. We're doing it with very strong hands that we're going to proceed with on almost every flop. We're doing it with some semi-bluff hands that are going to be flop dependent, that are going to have good draws on a lot of flops, but some of them we're not going to continue with bad flops. And then we do it with hands like this that have blocker value, but really no playability post flop. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so like pocket aces, when we three bet, we're going to continue on a lot of boards. 8-9 suited, we're going to continue on boards where we have strong draws or two pair plus. King four offsuit. I mean, we got the value out of it by using it as a three bet bluff candidate. It has blocker
Mm-hmm.
value, right? When they don't fold, this isn't a hand that is going to is going to find a lot of natural continues on flops and turns. Unless you're hitting two pair, it's going to be hard to have a very, very strong hand to continue with, and it's going to be hard to have strong draws to continue with. So I don't mind having this plan pre-flop. Here's this loose button player. I've got a hand that suits a pre-flop three bet bluff well, so I'm going to take that line with it. And when it doesn't work, sometimes it's just time to hang up your skates. Like you just
Yep.
don't get to win every hand that you play. And you'll find other hands where you're in a better position to continue, even when you are three bet bluffing.
So
So I don't
we might have been better off folding to the turn bet.
folding to the turn. Honestly, it's not crazy given how few rivers are good for us and
Right,
how infrequently I think this player is going to give up. If we
right.
thought they were going to give up more often on the river, then you can call the turn and you can get that four to showdown. But if we think that this player is an aggressive player who's going to be trying to take it away on rivers, not only when they have the hand, but when we just check, then yeah, again, if we had a crystal ball and we could tell the future, then yeah, we probably wouldn't have called the turn. But um,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So interesting. So I do like that he didn't lose a big pot just because he tried to take on this aggressive player from out of position and three bet, because that is a trap recreational players get into. They're like, oh well, I three bet because I thought he was wide. Now I'm post flop, and the only way I have to win the hand is by bluffing. And we kind of put this priority on winning the hand. But actually, winning the hand isn't really that important. What's important is
Right.
having more chips than anybody else at the end. And that doesn't happen by winning every hand. It happens by winning some hands and losing some hands, losing as little as possible when you lose and winning as much as possible when you win. Um, so kudos to Chris for not just falling into that trap of, okay, well, I got to win this hand because I started with a three bet bluff. All right. Well, thank you to Chris Jones. Thank you to all the fantastic posters and responders in the Discord forums here. Uh, thanks to Rob Washam. Thanks to Running Aces. Thanks to our
Thanks.
listeners,
Thanks
and
to Jim Reed.
and thanks to all of you listeners. We'll see you again soon on another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. Have a great night, everybody. Catch up. See you, Dutch.